Hey everybody, this is Zachary Jeans. Let's keep walking through the Bible. So today is episode 479, and we are looking at Esther, the book of Esther, and we are looking at the incredible events that happened around her, the people of Israel who were in Susa, and then throughout the capital or throughout the Mede and Persian Empire at the time, that had not returned to the land of Israel. So they're there. The temple's already been worked on. This is like the 470s, 480s going on. This is the time frame we're talking about, BC. And there is a plot to have all of the people of Israel murdered by Haman, who's the number 2 in charge under the king. And Mordecai, the uncle of Esther, who raised her, has advised her and guided her in her life, challenged her that if she doesn't stand with her people, the Lord will still deliver the people, but her and her family's house will not be, and that she'll be found out, because at the time, the king did not know that she was a Jewish person. All this strikes at the heart of anti-Semitic truth. People, for whatever reason, throughout time and history, continue to hate the Jewish people. That's not to say that any one particular Jewish person can't be wrong. That's not what we're saying. You can of course criticize a nation, a political leadership group, absolutely. But something deeper than that, at the heart of it, is this hatred that people seem to have for the Jewish people. And this just goes on. This isn't a new thing. I see it bubbling up in the social media from the left, from the right, from all over the place. And again, we aren't saying that you can't criticize a nation. Of course, you can't criticize an individual that's Jewish descent, and that's automatically somehow anti-Semitic. It is not. But behind a lot of stuff is some weird hatred. And of course we know that that's because Satan ultimately wants to destroy the Jewish people. Specifically, he wants to destroy everyone, but he really has a hatred for them, because that's through whom the Messiah is and has come. And God still has yet more work and stuff to do with the Jewish people, as Revelation lays out. So anyway, that's just a preamble. We're going to look at Esther. We're going to cover quite a bit of territory today. We won't read every verse, but we're going to hit the high points just to show the story of Esther at this point. So this is the deliverance, and this is what happens. This is how it all plays out. If you would, you're welcome to hit pause, go to esv.org. Excuse me, I got something here, and listen, chapter 5 through the end. Okay, and it's a great story. All right, why don't we pray and let's get going. Lord, I love you. God, thank you for Esther. Thank you for her faith. Thank you for Mordecai and his faith. God, thank you for the king and his willingness, Xerxes, to stand against evil that was being perpetuated within his kingdom. He was willing to change course, Lord. And God, thank you for bringing Haman to his own justice, God, that you turned around his plans for evil and you turned them back on himself. God, and I just pray, God, for discernment for people today about the events that are going on in the world concerning Israel and other countries. Lord, I pray, God, for the peace of Jerusalem. And God, I do pray, God, that you will take away any misinformation or misunderstandings about the Bible right now, and dispel them, God, and truly bring out truth. I lay that all at your feet, God, and it's in your name I pray, Jesus. Amen. All right. Yeah, there's an awful lot of commentary about the Bible, and I notice the ones that are spreading information, they never quote it. They never just go, oh, well, the book's right here. Why don't we just open it up and read it? So anyway, All right, so let's go ahead and start in chapter 5, verse 1. So they've just completed a 3-day fast. Esther's going to go into the king. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, in front of the king's quarters, while the king was sitting on his royal throne inside the throne room, opposite the entrance to the palace. And when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight, and he held out to Esther the golden scepter. Okay, that's important. Then Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given you, even to the half of my kingdom." Probably not, but you say things. And Esther said, "If it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for the king." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly so that we may do as Esther has asked." It's like, I'm bored. This looks like a good time. Let's do this. Being king, you've had every pleasure. The world starts to kind of get a bit dull. And when something surprising and interesting like this pops up, he's like, all right, let's do it. So I haven't seen Esther anyway for about 30 days. Let's see her. So Haman, obviously the guy who's plotted against Mordecai, her uncle, and to have every Jewish person killed in the kingdom, she's like, hey, have Haman come. Well, so the king and Haman came to the feast that Esther had prepared. And as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king said to Esther, "What is your wish? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half of my kingdom it shall be fulfilled." Again, really throwing it out there. It's just a way of saying, a way of talking. This is pretty common when you read the book of Daniel. We'll see it again. But this, like, up to half my kingdom, right? And it's like, okay, probably not, right? But it's basically just ask anything, When you go and talk to people of authority and power, probably won't talk to a king in your life, possibly, but probably not. When you do talk with people with authority and power, and they're like, hey, ask for anything. The proverb says, when you're dining at the table of a king, put a knife to your throat. Be careful. Don't eat a ton. Don't gorge yourself. Don't fully take all advantage of everything there. Treat the person with respect. And if they offer everything, what they aren't really offering you half their kingdom or half their business or whatever it is. But if you show yourself faithful, there are opportunities that can come from those relationships. But what they're seeing is, can I trust this person not to steal everything or take everything I've got? So, but I digress. Esther is asked again, up to half my kingdom. Esther answers, "My wish and my request is, if I found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my wish and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the feast that I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said." Ooh. It's choose your own adventure. We got something more. Oh, what? Another feast? Another conversation? Oh, let's do that. So this is the stuff that, is unexpected and interesting. Okay, so Haman, so you got another day. So Haman's leaving. Haman went out that day joyful and glad of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he neither rose nor trembled before him, he was filled with wrath against Mordecai. So imagine this. Haman's just rocking and rolling, feeling high, just on life. Number 2 in the kingdom. He was personally invited by the queen to join the king and her for a feast. He's just got his enemies in his sight. They're going to be vanquished shortly. And then he sees the guy, the thorn in his side, the guy who won't bend the knee, Mordecai. Now, he doesn't, excuse me, he doesn't know that Esther is related to Mordecai. None of this is public. So you and I know this from reading the story. Haman doesn't know. And Mordecai won't bend the knee. Mind you, Mordecai and all the people of Israel have been fasting from food and drink for 3 days, pleading with the Lord for deliverance. Okay? So, nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. And he sent and brought his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman recounted to them the splendor of the riches, the number of his sons, all the promotions with which the king had honored him, and how he had advanced him above the officials and servants of the king. He was full of himself. Just a word to all of us. It's one thing to appreciate all the success, the different victories, the blessings of life. Of course, be thankful for them. Enjoy what God gives you. But man, there's that line that gets crossed where it's like, look at me. Look at how great I am. And that is a dangerous line. And we all have the opportunity to cross that line. Don't cross that line. That line where it goes from thankful and appreciative and enjoying what God has given you to look at me and how awesome I am. That's where Haman is. So then Haman said, even the Queen Esther let no one but me come with the king to the feast she prepared. Tomorrow also I'm invited by her together with the king. Yet all this is worth nothing to me so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, let a gallows, right? A gallows be built, 50 cubits high, 18 inches per cubit, 70 feet, 75 feet, something like that, tall. Then go joyfully to the king's feast. The idea pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made. I'm going to have a place where I'm going to hang my number one enemy. And so that's what his wife is like, yeah, why don't you make your heart happy with that? So he's like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. So you imagine those guys out on that night. The king could not sleep. So meanwhile, Haman has his men building a gallows, right? Just outside the king's palace, the courtyard area. And then the king, that same night, as these gallows are being built to kill Mordecai specifically, the king has a dream. Or a dream. He just can't sleep. So on that night, the king couldn't sleep. He gave orders to bring the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. It was written how Mordecai had told about Bethana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold and who had sought to lay hands on the king. And the king said, what honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai for this? The king's young men who attended him said, well, nothing's been done for him. And the king said, well, who's in the court? Now Haman, who had just entered the court of the king's palace to speak to the king about having Mordecai hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's young men told him, Haman is there. He's standing in the court. So the king said, well, let him come on in. So Haman came in, and the king said to him, what should be done to the man whom the king delights to honor? Man. In Haman's mind, we're about to read how he thinks it's all about him. What should be done to the man whom the king delights to honor? And Haman said to himself, well, whom should the king delight to honor more than me? Pride, man. Just it's so easy. It's so easy to get drawn into. Oh my goodness. Careful. Humility helps. Let him come in. So Haman comes in. What should be done? Haman said to the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor, let royal robes be brought, which the king has worn. Game-worn jersey. And the horse that the king has ridden, and on whose head a royal crown is set. And let the robes and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most noble officials. Let them dress the man whom the king delights to honor, and let them lead him on the horse through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. You got to wonder if he had already thought about this. It's like, fresh on the fly, like, well, what do you think should be done for somebody awesome? Oh, well, let me think about it. And you're hemming and hawing, you're thinking, oh, well, that would be cool, and this would be cool. Yeah, do that. No, it's like Haman's already kind of daydreamed and had visions and thought about this, and, oh, what would I want the king to do for me? And it's just amazing because the question's finally being asked, right? And he knows, this is what I want. All right. Then the king said to Haman, hurry, take the robes and the horse, as you have said, and do so to Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Can you just see the blood draining out of Haman's face? Like the absolute shock. He has the full composure of just a seasoned political official who's not going to break, in front of the king. He's able to hold it together, but the blood is just draining the joy. And he's got like that fake smile. It goes from a genuine, full, beaming smile and joy because he thinks he's about to be honored. And as the king is speaking, the joy, the true joy just fades and it's a fake smile. So Haman took the robes and the horse, and he dressed Mordecai and led him through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house, mourning and with his head covered. And Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him. When his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, you will not overcome him, but will surely fall before him. It's over, babe. She's like, it's over. You're done. You're cooked. You lost. This is it. It's done. Like you played your hand and it came up. Total bumpkus, nothing. The other guy's got a royal flush, you got nothing. Like any metaphor example you want to put here, you're done. So while they were yet talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried to bring Haman to the feast that Esther had prepared. Yeah, I forgot about that, right? So the king and Haman went into the feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king again said to Esther, well, what's your wish, Queen Esther? Shall be granted to you. What's your greatest request, or what's your request? Even to half my kingdom shall be fulfilled, right? Then Queen Esther answered, if I found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish. What? Record scratch? I guess we don't have records anymore. We do. We have a record player over here and some records, but yeah, it's just full stop. What? My life? You want your life to be granted to you? Up to half my king. Wait, what do you mean your life? Right? O king, if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent. For our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king. Look, if it was just a matter of us even being sold into slavery to some other kingdom or something like that, I would not have said anything. She probably would have. But that's the point. This is the pomp and circumstance of the situation. This is how people talk. But the point is she's contrasting. If it was something as awful as that, I would not have said anything. But, I and my people were being put on the line here to be killed. Then King Ahasuerus, that's King Xerxes, said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who has dared to do this?" Esther said, "A foe and an enemy, the wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the wine drinking and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm was determined against him by the king. This is no small thing. The king gets up. He's had a few. He's pretty drunk. And he gets up. He's just heard this. He's looking at his number two, Haman, his trusted guy. And he does everything he can to hold it together. And he goes into his garden to cool off for a minute. He's like, nope, taking a minute. Good practice. Anything upsetting you, take a breather, man. Take a breather. Go calm yourself down, talk to the Lord, take a walk, go look at some stuff that's not your phone. Go talk it out with the Lord. Take a minute. Don't act in wrath. Okay? And the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine. As Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was, can you just see Haman just groveling at her feet? And the king said, "Will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my own house?" As the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Bag over the head, man. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance of the king, said, "Moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose word saved the king, is standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high." And the king said, "Hang him on that." So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king abated. God says that, governments and, kings and rulers, they bear the sword. And for the point of doing justice. And not always great justice, but ultimately in a providential, the chessboard moving around in the world sense, God uses nations to enact justice in various ways. Sometimes unjustly in our eyes. Ultimately, we turn to the Lord, and we know our kingdom isn't here. Our kingdom's in heaven. New heaven, new earth coming. Our trust is in the Lord Jesus Christ. We pass through this life into the next. And this one's not very just. But along the way, sometimes justice is done. And in this case, it has been. So on that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was to her. He's my uncle. And the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and he gave it to Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. Then Esther spoke again to the king, and she fell at his feet and wept and pleaded with him to avert the evil plan of Haman, the Agagite, and the plot that he had devised against the Jews. When the king held out the golden scepter to Esther, Esther rose and stood before the king and said, "If it please the king, and if I found favor in his sight, and if this thing seems right before the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let an order be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the provinces of the king. For how can I bear to see the calamity that is coming to my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred?" Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, "Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows, because he intended to lay hands on the Jews. But you may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring. For an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked." So the king's scribes were summoned at that time, and an edict was written according to all that Mordecai commanded concerning the Jews, all the governors throughout the entire kingdom. And he wrote in the name of the king, with the king's signet ring, and he sent out all the letters and sent them out on horses, fast, right? Fast delivery. And a copy was written, and it was sent out to the whole kingdom. And the end of it is this: the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, and in every province and in every city where the king's command and his edict reached, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday. And many from the peoples of the country declared themselves Jews, for fear of the Jews had fallen on them. This is the heart of the celebration of Purim that the Jewish people hold to this day about this deliverance. Now, chapter 9. In the 12th month, Adar, 13th day, when the king's command and edict were about to be carried out, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, and the reverse occurred. Yeah, it's like Uno, right? Reverse Uno. Nope. Or as they say today, rug pull, right? You thought you're standing on solid ground, and then the rug gets pulled out from underneath your feet and you're sitting on your butt. So the Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king to lay hands on those who sought their harm, and no one could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all the peoples. All the officials, the provinces, governors, royal agents, who helped the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces, and he grew more and more powerful. The Jews struck all their enemies with sword, killing and destroying them, and did as they pleased to whom who hated them. In Susa, the citadel itself, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and also killed a number of the men who had plotted against them, along with Haman. And so the end of it is that God stood with his people. He gave one of his people, Esther, the opportunity to stand for him and his people in the court of the king and not hide. Now, at times, as we discussed, there are times when, laying low is okay. Put your head down, do good work, love people. And then there are times when your faith is called to account, your identity, to leave your anonymity behind. There are a lot of anons out there, and I get it, man. Like, if I would have kept my mouth shut during this whole last COVID thing, even around the 2020 election, and just had an anonymous account and kept my, views about the vaccine and masks and the ridiculousness that they could stop a virus that is small enough to attach itself to a cell. Like, yeah. Anyway, if I would have kept my mouth shut and not spoken up and just kept, working in marketing and software world, I would be in a much better position financially, and my soul would probably be fairly well destroyed inside me. And I probably would have had to, at some point, disclose that I wasn't vaccinated. I would have probably got my butt kicked out of that world anyway. But I could have been an anon, somebody who has an anonymous account and tweeted about stuff and shared on Facebook and hidden kind of my identity. And I don't disrespect those that do. They are doing a lot of work to speak truth from an anonymous point of view, because they don't need the personal credit and they want the truth to get out there. So that's a good way. For me, they're just things I had to say, and I had to put my name on them. So there are going to be times in your life when, the easy way will be to hide. And my heart goes out to you. Like, look, there are going to be times when you're going to have to hide, duck and cover, escape out the back door, as it were. It's okay. Like, you just got to discern, is this a time when that's the right thing to do? Or is this a time where God's calling you to make a stand like Esther and stand for, your faith, to stand for truth, to stand for in the gap for other people? Are you a person that is seeking your own glory like Haman? Or will you be allowed to be raised to a position of glory and power by God in the right time? First shall be last and last shall be first. That's ultimately what will happen in the next life. So anyway, it's a messy situation in life when we get put in these just pressure points like Esther and Mordecai, and the people were put in the kingdom of Persia. But when you trust the Lord and call on the Lord, when you seek him and you don't seek yourself, God has a way of working things out. God has a way of working things out. And those who plotted evil, that evil tends to come back on them. And yes, it never comes around fast enough for those who have been hurt by it. And it doesn't always come around while those who have been hurt by it are still here with us. But it does tend to work itself out. So anyway, I hope you're doing well. Esther was a fantastic book. We are going to be on episode 480 tomorrow. And I want to give you an idea of what we're going to do tomorrow if you want to go ahead and read ahead. We're going to be starting Job. Job is an epic book. It's huge. There's a lot of back and forth language. It's a narrative and a story that is considered in many ways poetry. Not everything said in it is true. It's just the opinions and thoughts of the people in the story. So we're going to have Job's detractors, his friends. We called them detractors because they really do try and steer Job astray from the Lord in the end. And yet their advice seems good at times. And we're gonna look at that and just the challenges that come when we have well-meaning, good friends that look at your situation and they're offering you advice, and it seems good at the time to them, and they make all kinds of assumptions about you, and it hurts, and you lose a lot of stuff in life, and life can get really hard. But blessed be the name of the Lord. That's what we're going to learn. Blessed be the name of the Lord. All right. So anyway, all right. Till tomorrow, episode 480. Keep walking, all right? God bless you. Bye-bye.